Right, we're going to say that bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan Torah. Amen. Blessed are you, Lord God, King of the universe, who gives the Torah of truth and the good news of salvation to his people Israel and to all the peoples through his Son Yeshua the Messiah, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So basically, going into covenants, we've been looking at pictures, right? So from how is God establishing his kingdom on earth, or what sort of layers is he giving us to be able to help us understand his heart and what he's doing here. Okay? So when we looked at Noah, just a quick recap. It was about dominion, right? He was going to establish his Messiah on earth. He was going to come and dwell with man. Remember the picture of the dove and the raven. Who was the raven? Elijah. Right? And the dove? We see that with Yeshua, right? Okay, that's just if you don't understand. Then we get up to Abraham, and Abraham goes through different stages with different promises, all building up one on top of the other, bringing us the entire context of the kingdom and what Abraham was promised. What was Abraham promised?
And he would become a great nation, the father of many nations.
Father of many nations. What else?
The whole world will be blessed through him.
Right? And anybody who blesses him will be blessed, or anyone who curses him will be cursed. What else?
You protect the descendants.
Sorry?
You protect there will be many descendants.
He's going to have many descendants, right? And he will also have kings in that will come from his lineage. Right? But ultimately, when we follow the thread of all these blessings, they led up to one problem. God gave lots of promises, lots of blessings, but then he said, well, you can give me all of that, what's the point? What was his problem?
Time.
What time? He never had an heir. There was the promised seed. The promised seed, the promised son, that was going to inherit everything. Right? And we see the Father setting up his kingdom so that this promised son would receive it all. Sound familiar?
Yes.
Just as Father has set up his kingdom on earth, he's going to give it to his son. Right, so that he will dwell with us. Okay? So here we have each covenant being intergenerational, having stipulations, everyone except for Noah's covenant, and trying to give us, or helps us understand it by giving us a sign. Okay? So, rainbow being a sign, Brit Milah is circumcision. And then we will figure out from Isaac and Jacob, are these add-ons, or is this part of the same plan? Before we get to the next big covenant, which is really with Israel. Okay? Are you guys all okay up until this point?
Yes.
Happy days. Alright, I want you to go to Genesis 26 for me. Let's try and figure out what we're dealing with when it comes to Isaac. What is it about Isaac that's going to help us understand this kingdom?
Whether he will himself provide a sacrifice.
Well, that comes with the binding of, right? But that really doesn't give us a picture of covenant, but what we want to see is the covenant establishment. Alright? So, if you guys are okay, we're going to start from verse 26. And I want you to try and look for the similar patterns we use with Abraham, and the similar patterns they're going to hit with Israel as they come across, okay? So, from 26 verse 1, a famine came over the land, not the same as the first famine, which had taken place when Abraham was alive. Yitzhak went to Gerar, to Avimelech, king of the Philistines. Okay, so we start again. God introduces, or he is carrying on his story, and he said, I'm going to put the son through the similar test of his father. Now, why would that be an important thing? Why would I allow it to happen again? Surely the lesson was learned the first time.
Each generation is to basically learn a lesson.
Okay, and what lesson is that?
We always faith.
Right. So God is God and He's going to walk with me. Right? Wasn't that your problem? You saw your parents walk and they might have had a relationship with God, or they didn't have a relationship with God, and somehow that affected your perception or your relationship or lack of relationship with God. Right? So what happens is you get to a point where you had to choose God and you had to take God's stipulations for yourself. It's an invitation, it's yours. Then with that, guess who's going to have a problem later, coming up after us? Kiddies downstairs are looking at you and you're doing all this weird stuff and they're like, no, man. Will I take that upon myself? Will I take what my parents have gone through? But sometimes God will allow them to go through similar circumstances to see, what as a parent do I want to give them? Think about it. You don't have TV. You don't have, books all that much. So what do you think we did around the campfires at night? What do you think Abraham's hot topic was?
Stories?
Stories. And what stories do you think Abraham would have told?
Stories of what things God did for him.
Right. So you imagine sitting there, being little Isaac.
You must have told him about Egypt, because he specifically says, you shall not leave this land.
Daddy, tell me about the time you met Pharaoh. Oh. And then you come up and then, have you ever had it, where you sat with your grandparents for a time and you got them to tell you the same exciting story over and over again?
Yes.
And you would sit there and you're like, Daddy, tell me, did you meet Pharaoh? Yeah. I said, did Mommy meet Pharaoh? Yeah. It was a funny story, that. And every evening or every so often they would sit next to a campfire and he would recount the miracles and the wonders and the relationship that God had with him. And when Abraham's starts to become less, your stories are the ones that you're going to have to carry on. And this is what I find beautiful about this chapter.
Wait, I've just told that program to stop telling me stuff. On the way down.
As long as they're glorifying God, it's fine. Okay? It says, which had taken when Abraham was alive. Yitzhak went to Gerar, and here we have another Avimelech. Remember, we have Avimelech and Avimelech, just like we have Pharaoh and Pharaoh. It's a title. Okay? Adonai appeared to him and said, don't go down to Egypt, but live where I tell you. Stay in this land, and I will be with you and bless you, because I will give all these lands to you and your descendants. I will fulfill the oath which I swore to Abraham your father. So there's a famine, and God appears. Isn't it amazing? Don't you want God rather to appear when there's an abundance, not a famine?
Yeah. But then you're never going to learn.
Right. What are you not going to learn?
Well, you only know that there's mountains when you're in the valley.
Right. Okay? And sometimes when you look to your hands and you're coming up short, that's when God can say, open them again, let me fill them. You don't have me yet. Let me step up and show you. And God here does something really crazy. Surely Abraham established worship with God. Yes? He had a relationship with God. How come Isaac doesn't just walk into it and, just as God was with my father, He will be with me now, and I will walk this through, and it doesn't matter what famine we face, it's fine, He's with me. God squeezes Himself down and He says, hey, so there was a famine. It's funny, I kind of built up a relationship with your old man this way, so I thought I'd try the same with you. God meets you at your need. How many of you have different testimonies of different points in your life where God just came down and He met with you at that point? The Creator of everything comes down to where you are and He goes, hi, so I'm God. Your father knew me. You probably heard about me. You want to try this thing? He says, I want to carry on this covenant with you. I want to carry on this blessing. I'm going to provide for you because I made a promise to Abraham. And He just stops in this moment. Think of any other religion that has this. If you want to go meet with a God, what do you have to do? You go climb Mount Olympus or get dead and then try to climb Mount Olympus. I don't know, we'll pick a direction. You have to ascend up to the heavens so you can have a conversation with Him, not with our God.
Or believe in flying donkeys and space goats.
Or whatever. You get to the point where God Himself comes down to you and He says, I see you don't have food, let's have a conversation. He says, I will fulfill the oath which I swore to Abraham your father, and I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. I will give all these lands to your descendants, and by your descendants all the nations of the earth will bless themselves. All this is because Abraham heeded what I said and did what I told him. He followed my mitzvot, my regulations, and my teachings. Now, isn't that an interesting thing? There's a famine, and God comes in and He goes, I'm going to give you everything that is covenant. Where did Isaac say, I want that? He didn't. So he just walks in and he goes, hey, I'm God and I'm going to look after you because of a promise I made your old man. And don't worry, everything's going to be fine and you're going to have lots of children. And what's Isaac's problem here?
No one.
Yeah. he's kind of going like, okay, well, we have to get to that point a little bit later. But he gets given all of these promises because Abraham did what? What was the last sentence? He followed all my mitzvot and regulations and my teachings. Let's just pause there for a moment. I thought Torah was only given at Sinai.
It's instructions.
Torah is teachings. It's instructions. It's all there, right? So when Noah made an offering, who told Noah which animal to offer? And who told Noah that he needed to make an offering? Cain and Abel? How did they know to make offerings? Right. So these things were common knowledge because they had a relationship with God. So that will set you up later. How bad must it get by the time Sinai happens that God says, write this down? Because there's no one walking out relationship with Him anymore.
Note yourself.
Yeah, when confused, refer back to.
No excuse.
Exactly. And we have this establishment of this word of what He said. And look guys, it's kind of important here for us. If we ever get to the place and we don't know what God likes and what He doesn't like, it's very simple. Open up your word, He'll tell you Himself. It's not overly complicated. I need clear understanding and direction from you, Lord, so we will wait and we will pray. And we will pray. And we will pray. And we will pray. And we get nothing. Why? Because He wrote it down for you already. I don't know how many people I've had discussions with, especially coming from our unique viewpoint of wearing tzitzit and stuff. And then they go, well, I've prayed and I've just not felt convicted. I'm like, why do you need to feel convicted when He told you to do it? Did you wake up convicted, not trying to kill anybody? Generally, you're pretty normal. You get up, you have coffee, you have breakfast, and you never had this conviction not to murder or steal. Yeah. You kind of probably knew that was a bad idea, right? And never mind the fact that He told you it was never an option anyway. Where does conviction come in when conviction is higher than instruction? He carries on His covenant and establishes it with someone who knows of God, who's seen the positive consequences of walking with Him, the blessings of in his father's life, but yet doesn't have that same relationship himself. He's seen the offshoot of it. And God says here, he got there, and I loved him because, it says, all of this because Abraham heeded what I said. Following obedience. So Yitzhak settled in Gerar. The men of that place asked him about his wife, and out of fear he said to him, she is my sister. Where's the children? Where's everything? Where's going on? What's up? And we see his sister again. He says, he thought, if I tell them she is my wife, they might kill me in order to take Rivka. Sound familiar?
Yes.
Yes. After all, she is a beautiful woman. But one day, after he had lived there a long time, Avimelech, king of the Philistines, happened to be looking out of a window when he spots it, Yitzhak caressing Rivka, his wife. Okay, we don't really know what that means, but obviously it gave an indication that he's very close to his sister. Oh wait, that's not his sister. There's something wrong here. Avimelech summoned Yitzhak and said, so she is your wife after all? How come you said she is my sister? Yitzhak responded, because I thought I could get killed because of her. Avimelech said, what is this you have done to us? Now when Abraham said it, was he sort of telling the truth? Yes. Half truth, okay? Or a half lie. Okay? Depends on how you want to frame it. Isaac? Yeah, like closer to extreme distant relative, maybe.
15th removed.
Yeah, the 14th generation on the one side of my uncle whom I don't know. Not really, but we follow the same pattern. Sometimes when we get ourselves into situations, maybe we should take stock and figure out where we learned it from. Maybe you're repeating the same thing because your father was fearful, but he kind of had half a leg to stand on. But you say the same thing. You act the same way. Why do we repeat the cycle? I'll give you a silly example. What happens if your parents drank alcohol to cope? So you drink alcohol. Not because you need to cope, but because you like it. So their sin becomes your reality. When do we stop and we ask ourselves, the things that I'm doing, is this of God or not? And then I can start to change it. He kept the same fear. He listened very intently to his father and he said, you know, when Daddy saved me from Pharaoh, maybe it was because of this. Guys, sometimes, you know, Yeshua said in John, we read last week that he came to break the cycle. Allow him to do it. You don't have to repeat the same negativity. You don't have to repeat the same cycle. You don't have to carry their fear. You don't have to carry their understanding. What you need to carry is your relationship with God, and you can build on top of what they had. And it doesn't matter if they had nothing, because that means you can build a new foundation and you can build up. But if they had something, you can continue the process of building up your life from it. You know, isn't it every parent's will that our children stand on top of our shoulders and they become more than what we are? So give them a foundation that they can stand on, show them what is good and show them what you struggled with so that they can overcome it before it becomes entrenched in you.
What I find interesting is the Philistines were not worshippers of El Shaddai.
Not at all. But they were living
They
in
still knew that adultery was not allowed.
Oh, we can argue morality code all the way back before this. But God is God and He hasn't changed, and if no one knew that there were certain things you shouldn't do, the rest of the people should have understood that as well. One of the people who could easily have slept with your wife and would have been brought guilt upon us, then Abimelech warned all the people, whoever touches this man or his wife will certainly be put to death. Yitzhak planted crops in the land and he reaped there 100 times as much as he sowed. Adonai had blessed him. Isn't it interesting that that number 100 comes up again?
Yeah.
How old was
99.
Abraham when he was promised? He promised at 99. At 100 years old he fathered Yitzhak. And yet Yitzhak sees 100-fold increase in whatever he touches. The man became rich and prospered more and more until he became very wealthy indeed. Notice this happens, the first statement didn't really change. A famine came over the land. God is blessing him in the midst of it. He's building him up. But this little section here between the wealth and that was a little moment with God saying, when the increase comes, understand it was because of Abraham and it's me that's blessing you. Understand your source. If you understand your source, you understand who to go back to. It becomes a praise report, not a boasting report. You did not do this. He did. He had flocks, cattle, and large household, and the Philistine envied him. Now the Philistine had stopped up and filled with dirt all the wells his father's servants had dug during the lifetime of Abraham his father. This is Pharaoh all over again. Okay, you're in a place where water equals life, correct? Okay. So if you're in the desert and you find a tap, because you're angry at the guy who put the tap there, do you chop the tap off? Some people do. I don't like this guy, so I take away water for myself because I'm angry at him.
Spite.
How long does it take to build a well? Can the whole community drink from the well? Yes. So why do I stop it up? See, persecution from whichever source, they will go to that point of destroying themselves while they're trying to destroy you.
What's it called? Cutting off the nose to spite the face.
Something like that. Abimelech said to Yitzhak, you must go away from us because you have become much more powerful than we. Sounds like Pharaoh. So Yitzhak left, set up camp in the Wadi Gerar and lived there. Yitzhak reopened the wells which had been dug during the lifetime of Abraham his father. The ones the Philistine had stopped up with after Abraham died, and called them by the names his father had used for them. Why did Abraham dig wells again? Besides for water? Right. You come, I give you water, and you go, well, you're really wealthy, and then I can say, praise be to my God. Which God do you serve? Well, there's only one. So whatever place you put, remember, it can be used as a well for those who need it. I meet you at your need so I can tell you about my God. Yitzhak's servants dug in the wadi and uncovered a spring of running water. But the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Yitzhak's herdsmen, claiming, that water is ours. So he called the well Esek, quarrel, because they quarreled with him. It's funny enough, when you start in modern day Hebrew, when you talk about your company, it's a very similar word, Esek. People go to work to fight, yes? They dug another well and quarreled over that one too, so he called it Sitna, enmity. He went from there and he dug another well, and over that one they didn't quarrel, so he called it Rechavot, wide open spaces. So he was far away from them. How many people go out their way to pick a fight with you? What did Yitzhak do? Did he slap them? Did he chase them away? Did he stand there and put guards over the well and saying, this is ours, we don't know if we're going to find another one? Absolutely. He acted more like Christ than what we realize, and he moves on and he moves on. He says, no, I'm going to hit water again because God is with me. So he gets wide open spaces that he can settle in. He says, because now Adonai has made room for us and we will be productive in the land. Argue, 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 push, 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 push. And maybe God's just saying, you're thinking too small, your campsite needs to be bigger. I don't want you here anymore, get out, you're horrible. Oh, they don't love me. So then you move to the next place. Get out, you suck. Oh no, you don't want me. And then you eventually get to the building you were supposed to be in. That's 3 times the size. And then God says, good job, faithful servant, you found the place I had prepared for you. And you go, huh? Sometimes God will use people to get you to where you need to be. When you're thinking too small, He might be thinking much bigger. From there, Yitzhak went to Beersheba, went up to Beersheba. Adonai appeared to him that same night and said, so as with Abraham, we have a meeting place and he says, I'm going to bless you, I'm going to bless you, I'm going to bless you. And yeah, he has another moment after he goes through all of that. Adonai appeared to him that same night and said, I am the God of Abraham your father, don't be afraid, because I am with you. What does that sound like? Well, this is before Moses. Think of Abraham's testimony. Which part of the covenant blessings does God look at him and says, don't be afraid, or great fear fell on Abraham?
When the covenant was being made with the animal.
And the cutting of the animals, right? Great dread and fear fell on him because now was the moment of entering into covenant. Listen to what he says. Don't be afraid because I am with you. I will bless you and increase your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham. There he built an altar and called on the name of Adonai. He pitched his tent there, and there Yitzhak's servants dug a well. Here we see him act out in praise. Here we see him understanding the fullness that he is going to establish that covenant. As I was with your father, I will be with you. Later we'll see it with Moses and Joshua. As I was with Moses, I will be with you. And slowly but surely God reaffirms the love he has and the agenda he has. How much do you think that must have meant for Isaac? Do you think those sort of doubts might have crept in? Am I good enough? Am I like my father? Am I able to do this? Do you think Isaac maybe had doubts, just like maybe you had doubts before you gave your life to God? Because you saw your parents do it, and now, what about you? Does God even love you? Does he care? Will he fight for me? And if you think about it from God's perspective, this is absolutely pointless. I save creation so I can keep it. I get a guy to leave his house. I promise him 3 times. I establish a covenant. I tell him through Isaac he's going to be blessing upon blessing upon blessing. Surely that would have been good enough. Well, I've already established you, but you were born. Here you are, I'm giving you the kingdom through your seed. Listen, he could have kept dead quiet from that point to Sinai. And said, but I told you guys, this is what I'm going to do. But what does he do? He goes to a man who's probably having a little bit of doubts about how he should walk and if he's good enough and am I like my father Abraham and does God really answer my prayers? And he meets him in the same ways and he just says, I'm here. Everything that I promised your father is now yours. He already promised Abraham that. Abraham should have told him, don't worry, Yitzhak, God said through you. God said through you. God said through you. But that is not here now. Does God honor that promise? Tells him twice. He says, I'm going to bless you, I'm going to multiply. So your descendants. And finally, Isaac here, in my little opinion of what I'm seeing here, is that he starts to celebrate. And he starts to praise God. Because he starts to believe God. And he can move forward knowing that God is going to do this. And it's not just because he walked with God, it was because Abraham walked with God. Right. Any questions up until that point? No. Do we see any sign of this covenant?
It's the same.
Same sign because it's carried on from Abraham. He said, I am the God of your father, Abraham. Every major covenant you will get through the scriptures is going to tie back to here.
He built an altar to remember the moment.
Right. Okay, people make standing stones, but it was about praise at this point. But he will tie back all the way back here. You're either the seed of Yaakov or I come back to the father of Abraham.
He personalizes it a little bit more. With Abraham it was global. With Isaac, he had to go and say yes. Almost like a marriage contract. You can't say yes for me or everybody else in this room.
So what's the principle?
He wants a relationship with every single one of us, but ultimately it's our choice, and we have to say yes. We can't choose on somebody else's.
As much as it's about the body and about the community, it's also about the individual. He did not just come to die for the community, he came to die for the individual, but it works the same way as well, right? As much as he individualizes it, don't forget you're part of a bigger family. Don't ever think you're alone in this, you never are. You have been given a bigger family to be able to help you in these moments. Help you with your walk. To guide you, to walk alongside you, because there are many people out there who just don't understand it. That's okay, we didn't understand it either. But because your eyes have been opened, you walk with what you know, and you establish that in your house. I find it funny that he pitched a tent in Beersheba. He goes, that's it, God's here, I'm staying. Do you establish your dwelling where you find your God? Well, I think a lot of us expect us to run ahead and tell God to keep up. What I'm seeing here is God establishing himself and Isaac saying, I'll stay wherever you are. Same as Moses, same as Joshua. And later we see the disciples with the same sort of idea. But it's a bigger picture, yes? Yes, alright. So he carries on with the same seed, same covenant. Brit Milah is establishing a nation. This is about his nation. Now let me just clarify that before you think that everybody just of the seed of Abraham is God's. Paul will say things like, not all of Israel is God's Israel. What is the difference between Israel and Israel?
One is a man, one is a nation.
No.
One is a physical seed, and then the other one is those who basically, like us, we belong to Israel because spiritually we join ourselves.
Alright. So we all understand more or less the physical seed, right? The nation of Israel. What about God's Israel?
That's, yeah, cool.
Hmm?
That's the spiritual, that's what came from Jacob.
No, that physical came from Yaakov.
No, but the striving, he renamed him. Because he actually had two parts now. There was the physical that was the heel grabber.
Yeah.
And then there was the one that actually strived with Al Shaddai.
Which was Israel.
So fair enough. What does that mean to me?
At that point, not much until the children of Joseph.
When in doubt, go to Messiah. So Messiah has his mommy and his brothers and his sisters come and visit him and they say, Rabbi, your mother and your brothers and your sisters are here. What was his response?
Who's my
Hey,
mother?
who's my-
Who's my mother, my sister, my brother? Whoever does? The will of my Father in heaven. That's my family.
Israel in heaven. Heavenly Israel.
Can you imagine being Miriam and hearing that coming out of your son's mouth? That Jewish mama had to restrain herself and remember whom she was talking to. But I also think if she was a softer woman, that probably would have hurt her more than what we realize. Your mommy's here. Your family's here. And he goes, where's my family? Who's my family? What did I do wrong? Why doesn't he love me? But no, he's teaching. You see, Israel, the kingdom of heaven is God's Israel. Whoever aligns themselves with him and does what he says, living out his mitzvot through the blood of Yeshua, empowered by the Holy Spirit, that is who you belong to. You make a clear distinction now. It is not about an earthly kingdom. This is not where you belong. This is why you will never fit in. Not this world, but the world to come. That's your promise. Looking around this room, this is your family. Because if your blood family doesn't understand this, they're not going to like it. Okay? How many of you have had to deal with people who think you're completely loppy because you follow this God? How many of those were close relatives and loved ones? Yeah. Makes no sense. But how can we understand something spiritual if we use our physical understanding? Our normal worldly wisdom. It does not correlate. But God says, He establishes us because we belong to Him. Nothing less, nothing more. If we looked at a physical lineage, every Mesopotamian is therefore the kingdom of heaven. Because Abraham was from Mesopotamia. No, that's not right. It was from the seed of Abraham. Okay. So which seed are we going to follow now? Through Abraham, but he came from different parts. Where did Rivka come from? So that was from but where did Rachel come from? Where did Leah come from?
Oh, Laban, that's from the same area.
Oh, same area, like right next door, close relatives of Mesopotamia? Not so much. And what about Rebecca? Same sort of family tree, but we had to go via Botswana to pick her up. So therefore everybody part of that geographical location is part of the seed we're talking about. No. You can be in Israel and not belong to Israel. There are many Arabs today that would rather see the place on fire than actually be there, but they belong to the nation of Israel, national Israel. You can be an Israelite and not belong to God. Today, you can stay in Israel and you can be an atheist. Heck, you can be an atheist Jew. I don't know what that looks like. It confuses my brain. But when you go to Israel, you see guys, no, we don't follow. But you're Jewish. Yeah, no, that means if you're Jewish, you follow God. Yes? No, I was born Jewish. Like, yeah. So what are you? No, I'm a non-secular Jew. I'm like, I start losing my mind. I'm like, that's like,
I'm a Christian, but I'm not a Christian.
yeah, I was born a Christian, but I'm actually an atheist. I'm an atheist Christian. Huh? It just doesn't exist, man. The logic is completely lost. And this is what I need us to come back to. It's about His kingdom. And if He's going to establish a new earth, a new creation for His seed, those who have the Word, those who have Yeshua implanted in their hearts, that is for you. Just like Abraham. To be a true son of Abraham, you have to believe like Abraham. Not just be born from Abraham. Alright, let's quickly go to chapter 28. Alright, if you've got a complete Jewish or a Torah Bible that's split with the parasha, I want you to read from verse 10. Now we know the story of Jacob and Esau, and Jacob pulling a fast one, and he steals the birthright once or twice. Is that the move that you need to make? No, not really, because the problem is you lack trust. Did God say that Jacob would be lifted up? Yes. So whose job is it to lift up Jacob? God's. Now if you have not seen your inheritance come in, or the word of God just come in yet, wait. Otherwise you can make Ishmael, huh? Here we see it again. We're going to push God's agenda by doing it ourselves. Don't get into that position. So anyway, he gets the birthright, he gets the blessing, he gets it all, and he's running for his life, and he has nothing. It's amazing. You just won the lottery of spiritual blessings, and you had to walk away from everything physical. And I love God's sense of humor. I'm scared of it as well. Because what you do to try and push the agenda, He takes you to someone to teach you really how it's done. And when we see Jacob go out because he tricked his old man, he's going to send him to someone who's going to teach him about trickery. Old Uncle Laban has got way more skill at this than you do, my boy. Let's see how you appreciate it when he does it to you. But you lied to me. You lied to your father. What does that matter? Well, now you have a problem with it. Okay, my boy, come sit here. We'll work another 7 years on your problem. Be careful how we deal with people. God wants to get that stuff out. Yaakov went out from Beersheba, loved Beersheba, and traveled toward Haran. He came to a certain place and he stayed the night there because the sun had set. He took a stone from that place and put it under his head and laid down there to sleep. Awesome. I'm running for my life. I'm worried that Esau's going to get me. My parents hate me. Everything's fine because my mommy said so and I have a rock for a pillow. My life is now complete. He dreamt there. And before him was a ladder resting on the ground with its top reaching to heaven. And the angels of Adonai were going up and down on it. Then suddenly Adonai was standing there next to him. And he said, I am Adonai, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Yitzhak. And the land on which you are lying, I will give to you and to your descendants. Now, is this a moment you want God to pitch up? Isn't it funny that from a physical point of view, could we say he's got nothing in his hand? It's a type of famine?
Yeah.
At your lowest.
Yeah.
So you wanted my blessing, did you? Here I am. Shall we have an honest moment between you and me? And God looks at you and all you can say is, okay, I done broke it.
You know, I heard a pastor talking the other day saying God takes you to rock bottom because from there you've got a solid foundation to build.
Or when you bump into the ground, you get to look up for the first time. So he has this dream, he's got a rock for a pillow, and then he sees this ladder, and he sees the angels ascending and descending. Later, I'm not going to go into it, Yeshua will reference himself as that ladder. Right? He says you will see the angels descending and ascending on him. He is the link between heaven and earth. And here, at this point, when he's using a stone, what's a stone in Hebrew? Avben. Right? You say, that's the link, it's an eben. Eben is made up of two words. Don't give me the Hebrew, give me the English. Father and the Son. So when the two become one, it's literally the only thing keeping his head up at this point is God.
And the Yeshua said that only he was the way to the Father.
What?
The ladder.
There's the ladder and the entrance to the Mishkan. Okay. So he goes, there's many other parallels with that. So he goes, your descendants will be as numerous as the grains of the dust of the earth. Wait, Faye. You've got to love it. The guy's sleeping on the ground with a stone for a pillow. Where do you think this oaks his dust? Everywhere. He's just like, okay. You will expand to the east, to the west and the east, to the north and to the south, and by you and your descendants all the families of the earth will be blessed. You see how he's carrying on the promises with Abraham. Do you see that when he made a covenant with Isaac, he did not nullify the covenant promises of Abraham? And now he's making a covenant with Jacob. He's not nullifying the covenant promises he made with Isaac. He's establishing it. Every covenant we have is built on top of another one. It's foundational. Look, I am with you. I will guard you wherever you go. I will bring you back into this land because I won't leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Wow. God's got a plan. I'm not going to leave you until I establish you. It's at these moments where sometimes you're at your lowest. When God just looks at you and he says, I'm going to pick you up because I've got a plan. Again, does Jacob need this word? Absolutely. Does God have to give it? No, he doesn't. Because he already told everything about Abraham and Yitzhak. Why does he have to tell Jacob the same thing? Because God's understanding is that he will meet you at your need and give you the courage you need to walk this out. He's got a plan and he's got a purpose and he's going to do it. Things might not look great right now, but he made a promise, it's gonna happen, and God is the one solely responsible for that. I love how he changes it. He says, look, I will guard you wherever you go. This guy had servants his entire life, and now he's running for his life. You think he's worried about Esau? You think he's worried about bandits? You think he's worrying about whether or not he'll live another day? He says, don't worry, I got you, I'm right here. Will I ever come back to the land again? Will Esau ever let me? I will bring you back. Doesn't matter what Esau thinks. I won't leave you until I have done what I've promised you. Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, truly Adonai is in this place, and I didn't know it. You've got to love statements like that. Isn't it amazing when God appears and you didn't even think it was real, and then he's just like, ding, ding. Oh. Just that little realization, just that little moment was enough for you to change your entire perception of where you're standing. Then he became afraid, and he said, this place is fearsome. This has to be the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Yaakov got up early in the morning, took the stone he had put under his head, set up the standing stone and poured olive oil on its top. He anointed the rock.
Where did he get olive oil? He has nothing.
Isn't it interesting? What people do and the first thing they grab when they run. It's really weird. It always makes me think, like, what would be the first thing you grab when your house is burning down? You know? Books. No, fail. And anyway, he takes this little pack, he gets it, so he's packing very light, but he managed to bring olive oil. God uses what you have, it's funny. And he named the place Beth-El, house of God, but the town was originally had been called Luz. Now, in true Abraham style, verse 20, Yaakov took this vow, if God will be with me and will guard me on this road I am traveling, giving me bread to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return to my father's house in peace, then Adonai will be my God.
Isn't that Beit-El the same place where that name is carved into the actual landscape?
No, that was Shalom. But in the territory of Shalom. But yeah, Beth-El comes up more infamously later with the golden calves. But he sits over there and he goes, if you do this, then you can be my God. Have you not done it? If you do this, then I will know you real.
So like he's on a bartering basis here with God. You see.
Yeah, you see, now if this was us, fly swatter. Just next to him, just to give him a wake-up call. Jacob, really? You just saw the ladder. I just promised you those things. I just told you I would be with you, and you're testing me already? You've been awake for 5 minutes. What's going on? You know? But, thank God we're not God. It says, and this stone which I have set up is a standing stone, will be God's house, and of everything you give me, I will faithfully return 1/10 to you. Later you see God listens to everything he does here. He doesn't rebuke him for it. He said, this kid doesn't even know me. He thought stealing a blessing was going to honor my name somehow. He has no clue about me. He knows, no, let me rephrase that. You're going to meet people in this walk, they're going to know a lot about the Bible, or they're going to know a lot about God, but they don't actually know God. You know the difference? You get people that will get there and they can quote chapter and verse but live like the devil. If you truly knew him, you would understand his love, you would understand his heart, and you would understand how really he is. And that should make you act differently. Knowing about him is a different story. You see, knowing someone takes time. Marriage is a journey of getting to know someone. And it's always changing. You grow together. You get married, you're excited, you come together, you make commitments to each other, and then you start to realize what those commitments were actually going to entail. For better and for worse, I would love it. Until you see the worst, and then you're like, what did I do?
I heard that the food that gives the most grief is wedding cake.
You know, you get a lot of people that have a very dim view of marriage because they didn't realize how much work it was going to take. But any relationship that's worth having takes work.
Yeah.
Anything and everything, but does not the reward far outweigh the work that you do? When it's good, you see a man floating when he skips next to his wife. You know, life is fantastic. All he wants to do is spend time with her. There are times when they are difficult and there are times when they are amazing. But even the most difficult seem to outweigh the loneliness they had or the lost peace they had before that person came into their life. Now if we can apply that in a physical, normal relationship where we only understand a small dynamic of it, how much more so when we start thinking about the relationship with God. Really getting to the heart of Him and not just know stuff about Him. Atheists know a lot about a God they don't believe exists. Do you agree? He never created the universe, evolution did that. He never has a personal relationship with you. He never does this, he never does that, he doesn't do that, he doesn't. There's a whole lot of and you go out trying to disprove everything that he is. And then all it does is take one person to stand over there and just point them back to the very thing they're trying to get away from. It's like talking to an evolutionist about the butterfly. One day, a caterpillar decided it didn't want to be a caterpillar anymore, so it changed species. Why didn't it figure that out a long time ago and just come out a butterfly in the first place? Well, you see, it's far more complex than that, is it? Or is it something completely ingrained in him by the person or the being that created it that decided, no, I'm going to show you who I am through something that completely changes who they are. You see, coming to God is something like that. You're so busy about the world, running along the world, focusing on all your things, but you were made to be so much more. Some of you decide to climb into a cocoon, we call that baptism, and we go, from this point on, I want to be different. And you decide flying is a much better way to see everything that you're supposed to be seeing. You see, it's about heaven, it's not about the grass on the floor. God lovingly, patiently, purposely, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And He reaffirms it time and time and time again. And He looks to you and He says, all right, you get it yet? I'm here, I've got an agenda, I'm going to do it. Guys, whether they believe it or not, He's coming again. Whether they believe it or not, He's going to establish His throne here. Whether they believe it or not, He's going to call you His sons and daughters. Whether they believe it or not, He's going to fix everything. It doesn't matter what other people believe, the reality is. If God never appeared to Isaac, my father was completely mental and he had this relationship with this fictitious guy and we saw him do some cool stuff, but then it was over. It died with him. But could Isaac then walk away from that calling once he had met God? No. Could Jacob? No. Can you? Isn't that the decision we always make? When my brother went for a long walk, he's in the wilderness. Ultimately, God will have His way. I will not let you go until I've achieved my purpose. Can we say thank you, Abba, for that? Because how many times have we tried to run away and He says, not yet, I'm not done.
It's like the biggest fishing hook ever. Get back here.
And it's like, yeah, running, look how cute he is. You pick him up and put him back where you find him. I praise God for it.
Yeah.
Because there are moments when we're looking at things and they seem too big for us to handle. Right now, I'm running for my life. What type of promise about being a blessing to anybody is going to affect my logic change here? To Jacob, it's impossible. To God, it's a stepping stone. Step up, move forward. Greater things are coming. Amen? Alright. All happy up until this point?
Question. This check, returning 1/10 to God, is this where you get the tithing from?
I think he got that from his father.
I think so.
Right? You see that portion of understanding that God is the provider. Therefore we glorify His name by contributing to Him. Okay? It's part of it. Okay, so next week, Exodus 19 and 20. If you have time, you're going to need 19, 20 and probably 24, but you can go all the way up to 32. Chapter 32 because it's all the same portion. If you're a little bit confused, just go back on your shovel notes, it's the same thing. Alright, prayer time is every time.
32.